So the Greens are polling higher than ever before, as they are now in the 16 to 17% range in the multiple polls. And I feel like everyone's covered this, right? Everyone's done their little bit on, wow, aren't the Greens doing well? So here at Turn Left, I wanted to bring you a bit of a different angle, in that I wanted to question, why are the mainstream media still not covering the Greens in the same way that Reform are getting coverage for similar polling numbers? And to find out about this, let's take a look at how Reform were polling last year and how they were treated by our media. Now, according to the Political Quarterly, under the banner of Reform UK, Nigel Farage's rebranded outfit secured more than 4 million votes in the 2024 UK election, 14.3% of the total votes cast, winning 5 seats in the process. 14.3% of the vote is below where the Greens are now in current polling, not by much, but it's interesting to compare the treatment that Reform got in 2024 to how the Greens are treated when they are currently, obviously, on 17%. Loughborough University published a report on media coverage during the 2024 general election, and the report stated, Reform UK was the only political party to feature in more good news than bad, with Nigel Farage stealing the show. The Reform Party was the third most prominently featured political party in the press, at 10%, with returning leader Nigel Farage accounting for most of these appearances. So if 14% gets you featured more positively, and you can get 10% of all press coverage, will this work out for the Greens on 17%? Proportionally, can we expect our mainstream media to cover the Greens 15% rather than 10%, because it's a little bit higher, of the time, and in an overall positive light? If not, why not? Why would our media cover Reform positively on such a low percentage, but the Greens don't get the same treatment? Kind of makes you wonder whether Reform is actually the anti-establishment party, right? This party full of millionaires and private schoolboys. I think that 80% of Reform's current crop of MPs were privately educated. And then there is the other set of polling data that we should talk about. Among 18 to 49s, the Greens are the most popular party overall on 25% of the vote, and among 18 to 24s, the Greens have 40% of the total vote, more than Reform, the Conservatives, and the Lib Dems combined. Young people are overwhelmingly left-wing. And when I say young people, I mean anyone under the age of 49. It's quite a large cohort of young people. But we still get this thing of the media treating the far right like a resurgent youth, and like it's being driven by a resurgent youth, when actually what it's being driven by is largely the way that the media operates. And I think we really need to have a conversation in this country about radicalized pensioners who hold extreme and hateful beliefs about all sorts of things, but it's just because our right-wing mainstream media has such a monopoly on the views that older people are exposed to. We're always treated to the idea that Reform are surging among young people all the time. And so you get videos like this one from Reform Conference.
Reform Party Conference 2025. They've got a huge bus. They've got a few hundred people milling around here already. One of the interesting things is the age of the members that we see here. A lot of them are quite a lot younger than you might expect.
I'm 21 years old.
19.
I am 19 years old, okay.
I'm 19 and I'm here because I believe Britain desperately needs change.
We're going to have a chat to them and find out why they're here and what they think.
There's a huge sense of anger at the establishment. The way young people have been let down, the soaring housing prices, the lack of space in the NHS, the economy in a terrible state it's ever been. You know, Labour and the Tories have presided over this continued decline of our country.
The ideology of reform, almost like Thatcher in a way, I think it's important for us young people because it gives us aspiration to have our own home and to work hard and actually be rewarded for it. All of my friends are basically the same as me. Before, to be against the system when you're younger, it was to be more liberal. But now, to be against the system as a young, it's actually to be more right.
I was a member of the Conservative Party, but I left the Conservative Party after what they did to Liz Truss. When they installed Rishi Sunak, I think it was a sham. Just the sheer disillusionment with the Labour Party and the Tories. They've had it. They've had it. The two-party system has had it, right? Reform is the future.
I'm a Republican as well. I believe that you're seeing that a lot in the Western world. You're seeing right-wing parties, whether it's center-right or right-wing populist. Young people are ditching the left.
In that video, you notice the concerns that the young people brought up there? NHS, uh, the cost of housing and the cost of living, right? Three things that the left should be way ahead on. If we start talking to these concerns, I think there's a chance that we can win these young people over, but more on that later. They're more easily led astray by faux populism, but this can come from kind of the left or the right. If you don't believe me on this, here's a segment from a mini documentary that The Guardian did at Reform UK's conference earlier this year.
The Englishman is like sort of forgotten in a way, especially with the immigration and all of these laws coming in. Like, we're just sort of forgotten about.
The last time we saw political fervour like this was probably around the Labour leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. I was wondering, what do you guys think of Jeremy Corbyn?
He reached out to me. Jeremy, I wouldn't say he was a bad candidate. Before I moved to Reform, I didn't mind Labour, but then with Keir Starmer, I just felt he let the country down.
Politically, I'm closer to Corbyn than Farage, but I think young people are just looking for someone to look to, not necessarily policies to look to. So when they see Nigel Farage saying, these two parties have done this to your life, your future's going to be terrible, but we're going to fix it. And Farage can speak so much louder than the Conservatives and the Labour Party can. So I think it doesn't have to necessarily be Farage, or not even a right-wing party, just a successful, popular protest party, I think, is what young people are looking for, and that's what the Reform Party is.
Everywhere we went, we found discontent amongst young men, and for many, a sense that the world was leaving them behind. It felt like the votes of many young men were there for the taking, and Reform seemed to understand this the best.
Isn't that interesting? Those people there believed that they were actually, many of them believed that their politics were actually closer to Jeremy Corbyn's than Nigel Farage's. Curtis, now, do you think the Greens will be given more favourable coverage? And how can the left appeal to young men while making sure young women's voices get a better platform? I hope you found that interesting, by the way.
No, it is interesting. There's so many layers to this, actually. I first want to say that the media definitely haven't ignored the Green Party. They've covered Zach Palansky a lot, and I think that has helped the momentum and the growth of the Green Party. But there's a reason why the media won't ignore Zach Palansky. I've even seen GB News, who never, ever, ever talk about the Greens, now talk about the Greens. But they're doing it because they want to see Labour split the vote, right? Especially for GB News. They are basically the Reform News network, right? So when the Green Party is covered, it's done through the lens of this is Labour's failure. Now, that is actually true. The media aren't lying there, but it doesn't mean that they're favourable or sympathetic to left-wing politics. It's simply another way to sort of, boost reform. So there's that caveat. The second caveat, though, is just because they cover them more, as you pointed out, it doesn't mean they're going to get positive coverage. Reform do have the most positive coverage because they are the political establishment. Many think that they are anti-establishment, sorry, but they're very much of the political establishment. Most of them are ex-Tories. They've just left the Conservative Party and joined the Reform Party. Those clips there were very interesting, especially the second one where that young lad was like, I probably agree more with Jeremy Corbyn than Nigel Farage. For the mainstream political commentariat, that is going to explode their minds. They will not get that. In fact, I think Navarra, not too long ago, made a couple of polls, or a series of polls, which showed that Reform voters preferred Jeremy Corbyn to Keir Starmer. Right. And the point is, people don't think in terms of left wing and right wing. That's us political nerds, right? That's the media commentariat. And I'm not saying we're part of that, but we think that, this is left wing, this is right wing. People don't think in those terms, right? People think of one, populism, and two, vibes. I mean, the second guy who said I'm closer to Corbyn than Farage, he said it's not even really about policy. And I think that's where you get the majority of people. It is very vibes based. Unfortunately, in our political system, in our media ecosystem, policy is rarely discussed. In fact, you have to make certain campaigns. You have to do certain things to get policy notice, which is what Zach Palansky is doing when it comes to wealth taxes. That's only in the narrative because he's been pushing and pushing and pushing, right? But generally, it's not about policy. It is about vibes. Let's look at America for a second. I mean, why did people jump to Donald Trump a lot? And I think a lot of people think this was probably overblown. I think it's part of it. When he was going on podcasts, he was trying to win the cultural zeitgeist, right? And I think when you look at Zohran Mamdani, he's doing it for the left. I mean, he went on, I can't remember the names of the podcast. I don't really watch the sort of dude bro manosphere podcast, not my thing. But he was going on these right-leaning podcasts and he's winning them over. Why? Yes, he's got good policy, but the man is so cool. The guy knows how to campaign. He doesn't reek political establishment. He's like your normal guy. And that's where sort of populism comes from. I mean, agree or disagree with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn, to many people, said he is a breath of fresh air. He's not like the rest of them. Zach Polansky's the same. I've seen a couple of people say, I don't actually agree that much with Zach Polansky. I'm more of a reform person, but I really like Zach Polansky. So a lot of it is actually vibes, and a lot of it is populism. Even in the first video, which I wouldn't say is very representative of young people, I mean, they were either very posh Tories or they sound pretty privately educated, or there was an American guy. I mean, that's not representative. But as you rightly identified, they were talking about things that we care about: the NHS, public services, the housing crisis. Now, of course, everyone has the same um, diagnosis, right? The problem is the solution, because one of the people who was featured in that video said that's why we need more Thatcherism. It's like Thatcherism caused this, right? People have the same understanding when it comes to the diagnosis of the situation, and people feel like the political establishment is not there to serve them, and that's where you do have a split between the left and the right. Now, here's the false narrative from the media: is to push this idea that there's this big sort of reform surge among the young. Rubbish. Rubbish. The polls show that the left are overwhelmingly left wing. And why is that? Well, the first reason is because what have us young people endured our entire lives? I mean, as a millennial, we are the first generation to be worse off than our parents. It's going to be the same for Gen Z. It's because before we even got into the world of work, you had the Iraq War. Now, if you don't even remember the Iraq War, you got the 2008 financial crisis, right? Two major political crises before most of us started work. Then you had austerity, 15 years of austerity, then the pandemic, and now we've had a housing crisis. So no one, our age or younger, believes in the power of the state or the market to deliver the kind of life that our parents endured. So why would anyone believe in the system when it's the very system that has pulled the ladder up from beneath us, or so above us, right? And especially the market. And that's where people turn to the left, because they realize the market hasn't delivered, especially when it comes to housing. People are thinking, why aren't we just building houses? Why aren't we building social and council houses? Why are we leaving it to property speculators? Okay, very Thatcherite politics. And people don't want that. Now, of course, there's this myth that a lot of people say, well, young people are very left wing when they're young and they become more conservative as they get older. That's not true. In fact, under Thatcher, a lot of young people supported her. They did. So it's not about being young left wing, old right wing. It's just responding to the material conditions we're in. So the reason why we're all left wing is because we're recognizing that the political system doesn't work. To address your final point, how does the left tackle? Because it is true. Even though young people are with the left, young men are a bit more conservative than women, right? But that's kind of been the trend throughout all age cohorts. Like, if you're a guy, you're typically just a bit more conservative. One reason is because women have faced systemic oppression and usually sympathize with that. And I'm not saying that men don't face oppression, they absolutely do. Even white men face oppression as a working class person, right? But of course, it's way more visible when you're a person of color or you're a woman, right? So that's one factor. The second factor is that I think neoliberalism has become a a cultural thing. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, Margaret Thatcher used neoliberalism to change the hearts and minds of the country. She said that herself. In fact, she said, "I'm using the economics as a method to change the hearts and minds of this country, to turn us into a uber individualist society." Now, how does this fit in with my analysis? Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate's sort of manosphere, his political package he's selling people to young men, is basically feminism's gone too far. You, as a white dude, are actually being treated as a minority, and the political establishment doesn't serve you. So join Hustlers University, join me, and blame women. Right? Screw women, make loads of money, and then they'll be crawling all over you. Right? It's a super individualist, get rich way, but it's packaged in a cultural lens, a cultural paradigm. And what the left need to do is kind of do the same, right? I mean, even think about unions back in the day when there were strong unions. Yes, there's an economic case for strong unions, but I think there was a cultural thing, that idea of solidarity among people. It was culturally relevant to say, we should not allow the big bosses to get away with what they're doing. Now, culturally, young people are too scared to ask for a pay rise. So the culture needs to change. And lastly, we don't need to pit men against women. We don't need to say, how do we bring in men without alienating women? No, what we do is what I would say Zach Polanski's doing is the eco-populism. It's the unifier. It's saying that regardless of your race, your gender, religion, right, you are part of the 99% that will think about bills. Maybe you've been struggling with your bills. Maybe you're struggling to pay your mortgage, or you're never going to get a house. Maybe your rent has gone too high. Maybe you want to have a small business. And Zach Polanski's doing that. Right. Of course, within the 99%, there's going to be people with different experiences. If you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you're disabled, if you're trans, right, you are going to have different experiences. That's absolutely true. But what the left can say is we are far more united with us, the 99%, against the billionaire class. And this is what we need to unite on. It's a class first political project. Now, I say class first, not class only, because make no mistake, I'm not a class reductionist. I don't think we should forget about social issues. In fact, you can't. I actually think it's a bad analysis because there are so many factors in which class and social issues are intertwined. You can't simply break it apart. But it should be a class first thing where you say, this is what we are unified on. And Zach's doing that, and he's doing it very well. And I think he needs to continue down that road.